If you have experienced a relational betrayal in the last few months or maybe even the last couple years and have really struggled to get beyond it, in this video I'm going to tell you from my experience working with countless couples who've gone through infidelities, affairs of all types, the number one reason the betrayed partner struggles to get past the infidelity. And that reason is that you most likely have post-traumatic stress from the relational betrayal. The majority of my clients don't know this when they come in with different infidelities and affairs. A few do or suspect that they have, but it is the number one factor in my experience, even as complex as it can be, and it is very complex, really fully repairing and healing a relational infidelity. The PTSD is the number one sticking point. Hi, my name is John Hawkins Jr. I'm a licensed psychotherapist, certified trauma specialist, and co-founder of Hawkins Counseling Center with my wife, Basan Hawkins. In this video, I really want to walk you through this process of identifying whether you have that or not. We have another video that I put out that's 4 signs you might have PTSD, so I would encourage you also in conjunction with this video to watch that video so you can get a much bigger understanding of that. Let me first define infidelity. So when people come in, sometimes they'll get in a debate about whether something was an affair or not, whether it's physical or emotional, and they end up in this cycle, which is not the main issue about like the definition. So I say, okay, we're gonna chuck the word affair. And what I've come up with is an infidelity scale. And so fidelity is associated with like the security of the relationship, the trustworthiness, I'm true to my partner. So an infidelity would be the opposite of that. So let's say on the scale from 1 to 10. So let's say at 10, I'm having a full-blown infidelity with, sexual intercourse, other sexual acts. There's a lot of deception. It's gone on for a period of time. It's like a full-blown here at the 10. Down here to 2, maybe there's colleagues, coworkers, acquaintances that I can tell they have an attraction to me. Maybe I take some of that attention. There's a little bit of flirtation, even if it's somewhat innocent. But there's still like a boundary crossing on that scale. This is something I should only be getting from my partner unless there's some agreed upon situation. So then that kind of, in my experience, keeps us out of this debate about affairs or non-affairs. It's say there was a boundary crossing. There was an infidelity of some type. Then the other thing is, I'll quickly define post-traumatic stress. So this is when you've experienced an emotionally traumatic event, which a relational betrayal definitely meets that criteria. And for a period of more than a month, there's alterations in the way I think, perceive, my physiological arousal. Maybe there's a lot of numbness, hypervigilance. There's intrusive memories, thoughts, emotions against my will, maybe dreams, daydreams. I just keep obsessing about all these things. And so when I work with the betrayed partner, when the couple comes in, and I'll inform them there's a likelihood that you have post-traumatic stress. And I'll say, do you get memories, dreams, images, thoughts against your will? Yes. Are you chronically anxious since this has happened? Yes. Do you do things to avoid triggers, not want to talk about it, maybe other numbing strategies? Yes. So I'm like, you meet the criteria for PTSD. So the first area I really want to discuss with you right now is the emotional fallout of betrayal and why it's so traumatic. So when you get discovery, we call it, whether it's I find the text, the email, the DM, and it's mostly electronic these days. That moment, the bottom falls out. I'm flooded with panic, fear, anger, shame, sadness. It's coming at me 100 miles an hour. I don't know how to regulate these feelings. And so whenever we can't regulate, we disassociate and split that off. And that's how the post-traumatic stress is formed. But there's also a big hit to my identity as well as my sense of worthiness. So I don't care, how much self-worth you have, how confident you are. When your partner betrays you, that's gonna take a ding to anybody's self-worth. And then we also form our identity, for better or worse, in conjunction with how we interact with each other. So I see myself somewhat the way you see me and interact with me for the people closest to us, especially your romantic partner or spouse, whoever it may be. So then in that moment, I don't know who you are, I am, we are, the whole reality I just knew just completely shatters. And I'm just in free fall. I'm flooded with all this energy. I can't reach for you if you're the offending party because you're the trigger for me. I don't feel safe with you in this moment. You're the one that I would go to with all these feelings, and now I'm just left here. I can't, fight or flight doesn't do anything. People will try, they'll smash things, scream, yell, run out of the house. doesn't do anything except traumatize them more. So then we talk about neurological disassociation. All the energy that's way too much for me, I just split it off, and now it's stored in my body in what's called implicit memory. I'm going to talk more about implicit memory in a second, go into that in a little more detail. Right now, what I really want to discuss with you is how betrayal affects one's sense of trust and security in the world. So our attachment relationships, husband, wife, partners, parent, child, those are our most important relationships in our life. They bring up the strongest emotions. They are a secure base for navigating the rest of stress in life. So if I've had a rough day at work, or I'm challenged, or I'm just taking it on the chin, or I have an unexpected bill that's stressing me out, the number one person I'm going to come home to is my spouse, right? I'm going to say, this is what happened to me today, and she's my attachment. She helps me metabolize that stress and is that secure emotional connection that I need to help me get through another day. So when that is gone in that moment to whatever degree, now I'm flying blind. I'm out there in the world and I don't feel as secure and trustworthy as I did. And then it creates such a cognitive dissonance because that is how I saw you. So that, I find that's one of the biggest sticking points with people in the long-term recovery of affairs, is they don't know how to put this version of you I knew with this version I discovered together. And so that further exacerbates the post-traumatic stress. You know, a parallel would be somebody who grew up here in the United States, a great family, played high school sports, and then they go off to war and they see all these horrible atrocities and children being killed, and they come back and they don't know how to put these realities together. I thought the world was amazing, now the world's horrible. And both are true, but I don't know how to find the balance. So that's a long term, it's such a disruptor, like I said, it just keeps, you know, triggering the PTSD and expanding it. The third area I want to go into now is trauma triggers and flashbacks. So now I want to talk to you more about what I was referring to when I talked about implicit memories. So when we, you know, have that experience of something we cannot regulate energetically, you know, in our emotional experience, adrenaline, it will come through and cause damage to the upper brain if we can't discharge it into action. And there's such a sense of helplessness and powerlessness in relational betrayal. So then all this energy comes up, identity is gone, who you are, it's way too much. So we split off like a circuit breaker, all that energy, and now it gets stored low and right in the brain and in the body on a cellular level in what's called implicit memory. So conscious memory is things we're aware of, like images, facts, data. I pull them up out of my memory system, I share them with you, and I'm aware that I'm doing this. Implicit memory is stored in a different part of the brain that's also the brain's threat detector, and it's just a felt sense in the body. It has no imagery, no conscious thought, no linear time, and zero capacity to differentiate people, time, and place. So now what happens when people get betrayed? They start asking a firestorm of questions. Who was he or she? How many times did you have sex? What were you wearing? Where did you, right? And so the result of that is they're just getting flooded with images, created images in their memory network. So then when they're out and about during their daily life, there's all these associations to the betrayal trauma. So then if the person was told that this woman wore a yellow dress, or this guy dressed in this way, or drove this kind of car, they could not even be conscious that they just saw that, but their body will just flood now with adrenaline, either go into panic, rage, go numb from this cue. And then what further exacerbate that is what we call compound association. So then what this means is it's kind of like that metastasizes all over the place. So let's say, you know, I'm trying to get up and put one foot in front of the other and figure out what to do with this whole betrayal. And I go to Starbucks, and there's something about somebody at Starbucks or something somebody says that's an association to the betrayal. And I get flooded with all this panic, and I rush out to my car and get out of Starbucks. Now Starbucks becomes an association in my subcortical brain. So now I start avoiding Starbucks. Or, you know, I go to a restaurant that I typically go to, or we're gonna take a trip to try to get away and work on our relationship, but I found out that he or she took a trip with this other person. So now the trip becomes a trigger and just floods me with all this. Now I don't want to go on the trip, I shut down. And then trips now are an association. Now I can't take trips because that's a trigger, right? So the earlier you can get in, the quicker it is to clean these things up or stop them from compound. But if you are just watching this video for the first time and have had betrayals a few years ago and still feel stuck, I also don't want you to feel discouraged that we can still clear all these things out. We can go back to the original traumas, process those, process all the associations, so then a trip is just a trip and Starbucks is just Starbucks. That you can really like transcend that and not be stuck there anymore. The fourth area I want to talk about is emotional numbing and avoidance. So some of this is non-conscious in the case of disassociation. Some people disassociate, which I'm going to talk about in a second, up into this hyperarousal state and they can't get out of this state. Other people will disassociate into numbness, flatness, or they'll use dissociative behaviors like, drinking more, spending more, working more, eating more to try to numb themselves. And then there's also avoidance, which I totally get and understand. But let's say I don't go to certain areas of town that hold triggers. I don't talk about certain things. I don't want to go to therapy. Let's just like move forward. I forgive you, blah, 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 which is just another form of denial. So I know it's scary, overwhelming at times, but if you just avoid, this stuff is never going to go away. It's too traumatic to ever just clear out of your body through time. Time does not heal all wounds. Many times makes wounds worse. I just mentioned compound association. It's a perfect example of how time will make things worse for you. And again, it will keep showing up. You may not always recognize that that's what it was, but it's going to continue to show up for you. The fifth area is hypervigilance and chronic anxiety. So as I mentioned just a second ago, some people will adapt where their system goes way up into a fight or flight, or what we call sympathetic nervous system response, and they get kind of frozen or stuck there. So now everything is threatening. They're not only tracking their partner. I mean, I get it, but I've got clients that are putting recording devices in, GPSs, computer histories, and there is a space for accountability, but I have never found that to lower someone's anxiety, only increase it. Because now they're this tracker. I'm tracking him or her everywhere. I'm showing up outside their work or seeing where they're going. And sometimes there is an ongoing threat, and that's a whole other issue we won't get into right now, that keeps you in hypervigilance as well. But it's that, just chronic anxiety, that's where you get things like the startle response, or just, start drinking too much to regulate it, or over medicating yourself, just trying to get out of this like fight or flight response that's just nonstop, insomnia, all these different things come from that. It's that just chronic activation. And then what happens as well, just similar to like compound association, is the brain is in such a fear response. And so it's doing what it's supposed to do, but it's just doing it chronically. So then everything else gets exacerbated. Every other fear, you could have like something on your skin. You're like, oh my gosh, it's melanoma and I'm gonna die. Or now I can't fly and I never had a fear of flying before. It just spreads out all over the place and generalizes to everywhere because I'm just in this chronic fear response. Like some of my other trauma clients where just everything is threatening constantly. So then, if my partner says hi to somebody that before wasn't even a trigger for me, now they're like, what were you guys talking about? Or, it just kind of feeds itself. It's just this nonstop, which sometimes, clients like that wish they went to the numb state and dissociated because they're just stuck in all this. And then when you try to communicate from that place, it's just, turns into fire immediately because your system is so activated. All right, now the sixth and final area is coping mechanisms and seeking help. So from my experience, whether you have post-traumatic stress or not, which in the vast majority of cases, off the top of my head, I would say 80-90% of the betrayed partners have some level of post-traumatic stress. Even with that aside, working through sufficiently an infidelity of any significance takes a lot of time, complexity to fully resolve it. I don't think there is a couple on planet Earth that can do that themselves. There's too many emotions, too many moving parts, attachment histories. It spins away from you like nobody's business. And again, then you go back to the trauma part. Trauma doesn't go anywhere. Like you said, time does not heal all wounds with trauma. It's frozen in the system. It can't move anywhere. So time's not gonna do anything but create more compound associations and more shame and all that kind of stuff. So most trauma therapies of whatever type advocate what's called grounding strategies. So when you get those associations, like we talk about the Starbucks, or maybe I'm at Chick-fil-A, or maybe I'm at this restaurant we used to go to, or the trip thing, you're getting sucked out of the present into the past. So your eyes may see now, but your body is not here. It's in the moment that I discovered the betrayal. It's in all these other moments. So one of the things we work on with people just to try to get some stabilization right out the gate is these grounding strategies. So what you're doing is using your 5 senses. sight, smell, taste, touch, hearing. And some people respond more to some versus the other, but you can start to practice on them. Don't worry if they don't work immediately. And that is, you know, things like maybe walking outside, because the senses are so much more intense. So I can feel the heat on my skin. I can look around, see where I'm at. Tactile, you know, some clients have certain textures they'll carry with them. If they start to get a flashback, they can kind of work on trying to feel that. Or some of my clients will actually come to a session and ask if it's okay if they take off their shoes. They can rub their feet on the carpet and stay grounded. All these kind of things. Senses are great because it's one of our most primitive senses. And so there is some data showing that scent can get past dissociation. In your brain, there's a part of your brain called the thalamus that's like a relay switch for your five senses, and it'll block that energy from getting to the upper brain. Some data shows that scent can get past that block. So things like essential oils, perfumes, fragrant soaps, you know, some of my clients have done that on their own, even realizing they were grounding. They're like, every time I get nervous, I sniff this little soap and I'm able to like perform and function. And any secure attachments you do have, friends, family, and I know this is where it gets really challenging because people get very isolated in terms of affairs and infidelities. They don't want to talk about what happened. They're embarrassed. Maybe they don't want everyone to think of their partner as this horrible person, because in most cases they're not like out there predatory, like seeking out other partners. They, for whatever reasons, from their own woundedness, cross lines, made a mistake, and they're here trying to repair it with their partner. And again, the shame that comes with all that stuff, so it get very isolating. Or friends and family just like, screw him or her, you need to leave him, da, da, da. So there's no space for understanding, but I also, yeah, I'm hurt and I'm angry, but I also love this person I spent 15, 20 years with, and I'm ready to just throw our whole life away. And so they need a safe space. If you have anyone who's willing to be as neutral as possible, just hold space for you. I know you may not feel like reaching out for them, but I would say grounding and attachment are your two lifelines right now. And then by all means, please seek professional help, because, you know, I've got a lot of clients who've come to me who've done amazing work on themselves before getting to me, and they're still curious or even frustrated with themselves of why certain issues still come back up for me. And I explain to them, you've done great work, and that's why you can hit the ground running with me, but you have to work with somebody like a trauma specialist to actually clear that from your body. You're not just gonna be able to do that on your own. So just reviewing those last three things: grounding strategies, go on YouTube, go on Google. There's a plethora, an endless amount of techniques, breathing, certain breath works. I mean, you can just go on there and start typing this stuff in, and you'll have more resources than you can go through in the next few months. Connection, stay connected to people. I know you may not feel like it. And then seek professional help, because you really need the support, and as well as you and your partner, if you guys want to work through the relationship trauma and injury. So as always, I hope you found this video useful. I hope you benefited from it. If anyone you know, love, or care about could, please forward it on to them. If you want to reach out to us for more information or to seek help, contact my wife, Basan Hawkins, and I at hawkinscounselingcenter.com. And I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video.